Hey everybody, it's MP. We're here once again, doing our, I always say our like a pirate, our
Best Euron Greyjoy impression.
episode 5 Eastwatch review and analysis. Once again, we are joined by Calum, and of course, filling in for DJ is the lovely Claire. You guys go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Yeah, same as always. Just me. I'm a UK law student, and I'm just happy to talk about Game of Thrones. By the way, Claire, this is putting you on the spot quite significantly. But are you free to do the finale with us as well?
Should be. Yeah. Back from London on. God, sorry about this noise. It's going to stop in a minute. I'm back from London on Wednesday, so I'm going to be doing my review with House Polish on Thursday for the episode 6, and then I'm around the following week. So yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Should we?
If you want me.
Oh, we definitely want you. Right.
He's looking forward to it, and he's always. Luckily, he misses you, and we get to have you. But
it'd be nice to bump into DJ again.
Yes. Introduce yourself, Claire.
Hi, I'm Claire. I hang around here from time to time, and I do episode reviews with my nail polish friends Catherine Cronall and Lisa Hendy on all of our channels, on usually either on a Monday night or a Thursday night. But you can catch our review on Thursdays, on Thursday this week. Next week, sorry, I've weeks completely mixed up. On my channel, we'll be reviewing episode 6 on Thursday night.
Sounds good. I've watched bits and pieces of your guys's, and it's or your ladies, and it's quite good. Quite good.
Am I the only person who sort of like just jumbles in guys as everyone? Is that like a weird thing to do? When I say guys, I mean everyone.
We could have a huge discussion about this, because a friend of mine, a feminist friend of mine, hates that like being lumped in, like both genders being lumped in as guys, and it's like, well, it's a kind of it's an American thing, and we all seem to have adopted it, but she gets offended by it and says that it invisibilizes women. So
invisibilizes, that's an interesting word.
That's not fair. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
however, my mom lives in Ireland, and in Ireland, where my mom lives particularly, everybody, whatever gender, everybody gets called lads. So
I often walk into a group of people and say, "Hey, ladies, how's it going?" So I mean, it's whatever it is, right?
I just like, perhaps incorrectly, but I always just subconsciously assumed guys as just like people, just like a synonym for people. But maybe that's incorrect. I know in America, guys tend to be more male like oriented, but for me, I don't know. It just seems like people. But hey, it's completely irrelevant to the topic that we're discussing. But you know, it's always nice to start off on a good foot.
I usually stick with folk. Hey, folks.
Yeah.
No, that is American. Howdy, folks.
Or peeps.
Peeps, yeah. Anyway, hi everyone.
I'll just stick to geezers. Right, should we get into it then? I think that, to be fair, that could be argued to be male as well, so that's probably not getting me off the block. Right, so should we start with at the beginning?
Yeah,
as good a place as any. Yeah, let's do it. Let's sort of lump a few connected scenes in together. So we start with the obviously Bronn heroically pulling Jaime out of the water, the aftermath of the battle, and the whole Dany and Tarly thing. So if anyone has anything on any of those scenes, then we'll just jumble them in as one, because they're in the same sort of location.
Sure. Oh, by the way, everybody, Calum has the flu, so he's going to be sniffling and coughing.
Yes, I can quickly guide us away if you guys want me to.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think you guys are both quite familiar with what I like to generally pick out, namely sort of the directive and like written quirks that seem to be significant and cognitively placed. So again, I refer you back to like when I said about Danny like touching the floor and then putting a hand across and whatever, and sort of what it represents. And I feel as though there was another aspect of that in this episode, which was, directly following the battle when Tyrion's sort of walking through the remnants of the battlefield. And like the Lannister music's playing, and it's toying with your emotions because it's implying that he's having experiencing some form of regret, perhaps. I mean, you guys might read into it differently. Of course, it's very different in the shows with the books because we don't get the clear and direct access to the characters' minds that we do in the books. So we just have to sort of read and analyze as best we can. But I think more specifically, what I wanted to mention in this scene was it refers back to a quote that Tyrion made when speaking to Cersei in, I think, season 1 or 2. I can't remember which one it was. Might have been actually in the later season, might have been 3 or 4. He says something along the lines of, "A day will come when joy turns to ash in your mouth." And I feel as though that's been sort of alluded to in this particular scene, because if you'll remember, as Tyrion sort of walking through and looking at the aftermath of the battle, the battlefield is absolutely smothered in ash, which obviously makes sense because dragons would just torch people to death and whatever. But I think it's there's a huge emphasis on it, and there's a lot of it, and I think you get a really poignant look at this when Tyrion sees the corpse of the Lannister soldier. When he's like the corpse is like huddled behind a shield.
That was a Easter egg.
Yeah, and I think
that's funny because I thought when Tyrion was walking through like the battle aftermath, I thought the whole sort of devastation of what he was looking at looked very similar. It just looked like snow to me.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'll just very quickly tie this up. So with the whole ash thing, I think it was like potentially. Well, I'm not sure if I think this, or if I'm sort of wondering what you guys think. But I'm sort of wondering if it's sort of meant to signal the start of Tyrion's promise of revenge to Cersei, because it is like quite well. I mean, you sort of just said something that sort of goes against that grain, but to me, it was very obviously like ash, and I think that's sort of a throwback, or at least some form of nod to the quote that I just previously mentioned.
Yeah, sure, I would agree that it probably is. It's also a throwback to Peter being Lord of the Ashes and Annie being Queen of the Ashes, and you can't burn the whole kingdom down just to win, sort of thing. But yes, no, I see what you're saying. And I would argue that Tyrion's looking for Jaime when he's walking through there.
Yep, that's a brilliant point.
Could be that, to tie in with what you're saying, that he was trying to find Jaime amongst the ashes, and that would have been, well, for a split second maybe, Cersei's joy turning to ashes in her mouth. Not that it would bother her too much, I don't think. But Claire, go ahead.
I found the beginning of it really that it was just like Bronn turned into Aquaman, and I couldn't get past that. I just couldn't get past.
Yeah, I thought Calum was supposed to be Aquaman.
I just couldn't get past how implausible it was, and just how far away where they would have gone into the water. It was just crazy, and that's all I really got from that. Was just like, wow, that is plot armor. If I've ever seen it before, like literally, that is plot armor.
I must just quickly say, I'm sorry, did I cut you off there?
No, it's okay.
I just really quickly, I just wanted to say that I feel as though, although I've really enjoyed the episodes of this season, I do feel as though the writing hasn't been up to scratch compared to the previous seasons. In terms of compared to other TV shows, it's still way and above. But I feel as though there's just so many holes in the writing this season, and I don't know, maybe because there's 7 episodes, so a lot of things have to be rushed. But I completely agree that that's one aspect of it, and there's just so many other like funny aspects that
you could really, you could heavily argue. You could, and I'm not going to because I don't want to sound like a real horrible bitch, but you could argue that this season more than any other is leans more towards fan fiction because of lack of source material. So it's easy to kind of jump on that. We also know that because of the wonderful world of TV and TV budgets, that it can't go on forever and it has to wrap up at some point. And there does need to be lots of expedition and advancing the story and just suspending your disbelief around things like traveling times, and almost to the point now where I'm going to have to be careful, because just to let you disclaimer, everybody, we've all seen the lead episode. But in terms of travel, now when you know somebody's going to a certain location, oh, they're going to turn up in the next scene, you kind of expect that to happen just because things are moving so fast. So you have to suspend your disbelief. But the whole Bronn and Jamie scene was just it was just a little bit too much. I just got the whole Aquaman thing in my head, and then once that was there, I just couldn't really pay attention to the rest of that scene. But and Tyrion walking through the battle aftermath, I just thought was, you know, it was for us to try to determine whether or not Tyrion is going to betray Dany. Is he going to be, you know, does he have huge doubts? Does he believe in her? You know, it's difficult really to tell at this moment in time. So, I mean, are we moving on to Dany?
Yeah,
it's all
yeah. We're doing it geographically, so just anything in that location.
Again, I just found this episode is quite difficult for me to kind of get a grip on Dany and what her motivations are. So she seems to go from break the wheel and do something very different to displaying signs of being a bit of a tyrant. Or, I mean, later on when she was talking to John and she said, you have to show strength, and strength sometimes looks terrible. So I've kind of, since the episode, I've been backwards and forwards about, did she do the right thing there? Was it, you know, was it the right thing for her to do? And I can also understand Tyrion's anguish about basically wiping out a house. I mean, that's what they said. It was, you know, it would be wiping out House Tarly. Nobody seemed to mention Sam. Possibly nobody knows beyond the wall where Sam is, or who he is, or that he even exists. Obviously, it merits saying that burning the Tarlys completely mirrors the Starks being burned by the Mad King. And there was quite a lot of mirroring in this episode. You know, you've got later on, you've got Gendry and Jon kind of mirroring Rob and Ned. You've got Dany kind of sometimes behaving a bit like a conqueror. So like, you know, the arrival of Aegon. So there seemed to be a lot of mirroring that relates back to like Stark history or Targaryen history. But yeah, I still can't decide whether or not I thought she did the right thing. Again, there's a lot of situations where you look back in hindsight on scenes and think, well, what could they have done differently in that situation and not compromise their position? So yeah, that's kind of all I made really of that. I thought Dickon was a bit of an idiot, but you know.
What did you think of the morality of what Dany did, MP? Because I have an opinion on it, but I want to know what you do.
I think, first of all, she did give them choices, and Tyrion gave them a choice with the wall. I was watching Small Council last night, and people said this, and I totally didn't catch it, but of course it makes sense. If Randall Tarly went to the wall where Sam is, there's no way he would ever live that down, right? So he couldn't go. Dickon, maybe.
But again, can I just interrupt you there and say that I think that just demonstrates yet again how inexperienced Tyrion is at being a hand, because Tarly was absolutely right. She had no jurisdiction to send anybody to the wall.
No, but if he decides, okay, yeah, I'll go to the wall, he's going to So the only reason he's saying no is because he's being a stubborn cunt. I mean, but the other thing is that Tyrion did offer the idea of, throw him in a dark cell for a couple of weeks and let him think about things. And in those 2 weeks, you can have a accord with him or talk and try to sway him to your side before just outright burning alive anybody who refuses to, just to make a point. I don't think it was the right thing to do, but I understand why she did it. I just think there are other options available than just refusing to allow somebody to refuse you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Calum, and then I still have to talk on many of the scenes, but you had a point.
Well, I mean, one thing, in sort of most of what you said, I completely agree, and I don't want to repeat it because then I'm not really, saying anything other than what you've just said. But one thing I would say with regards to the whole idea of her potentially taking them prisoner, it's interesting because just the sort of the practicality of taking prisoners in modern day Westeros. I mean, there's not enough food to feed the people as it is. So that would be an issue, especially with the location. I'm assuming the only place in which they could imprison them would be Dragonstone anyway. Whether or not they have cells that are large enough to fit all of the people who would prefer to be imprisoned as opposed to bend the knee is another question. But also, I just want to again go back to what you said on the fact that they were given multiple choices, and when they stepped forward, they both knew what was going to happen. They knew their choice and they made it. So I don't think that if you're in a position of, if you're in a situation like Dany is, which is essentially war, then there's always going to be casualties on both sides. And I feel as though if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be involved in a war in any shape. That's a prerequisite for war is that killing will take place, and if you're not strong enough as a person mentally to commit that, then you shouldn't be there. And there's no difference really between people are making a big deal about this whole execution, but what's the difference between this and Dany killing all the soldiers during the battle? I mean, there's no difference morally. That it's still the same thing. And I mean, if anything, it was more moral in this case because they were given a choice.
Yes, and she did spare the lives of many others. I agree with you. I still think there are other ways to do it, but yeah, no, people are going to die, and she saved probably at least a good 20 or so men that were still standing up by killing the two. To me, I saw it almost paralleling when I can't remember what she did, but she killed the guy that killed the Harpy back in season 4, probably. When
oh yeah.
And it was the same thing. Like, she didn't give him a chance to. There was no trial. There was no sort of anything. Not that you're going to hold court there right then and have a trial or anything like that. But it's just like that guy disobeyed her. She's dead. And as soon as that happens, you're dead. And I think it could stand to reason that she could sway people's minds also by proving, you know what? Just because you disagree with me, there's another option. But I mean, it's neither here nor there. I think regardless, we're going to see what Dany becomes. I personally think eventually she's going to become smarter rather than ruthless as she is at the moment. But I mean, I don't know.
I'm sort of wondering. I'm wondering whether or not death is preferable to being imprisoned at this point. Obviously we'll get to this scene as we go, but I mean, you'll note one particular part of the dialogue between Beric and Jon was that Beric said, was it? No, it wasn't Beric. It was Thoros who said, "I'd rather go beyond the wall than be left here to rot in this cell or whatever." And if he's choosing to go on a suicide mission beyond the wall as opposed to being imprisoned, then would those people have been any better off in a cell? You know what I mean?
Yes, but they actually have an objective. I think a lot of those men would choose to sell rather than burning alive,
Yeah.
if that was going to be their fate. But I mean, it's each their own, right? Some people would choose death, some people wouldn't.
Yeah.
So I just want to run through the scenes and the notes I got on them.
Yeah, sure thing.
Anytime either of you and argue.
Just want to add that they are soldiers, so it's honourable for them to die in battle.
Absolutely. I mean, unless you're conscripted, right, and you don't want to be there, which we see a few of them last season sort of shaking in their boots when the Dothraki were charging them. But I thought that the only takeaway I got from the Jaime scene, and I'm in agreement with all of you, it was a little too easy. They could have at least showed him being swept downstream or something like that and given him a reason to, you know, end up a mile down the river. But we saw Jaime's thinking in what he was trying to do by killing Dany, and in his mind he was going to end the war right there. This is a noble side to him.
Yeah.
People are still up in arms about Jaime shoving Bran out the window, but he does things that are for his reasons only, not for society's reasons.
Yeah.
And quite often that is for the betterment of society. Bran is, you know, the exception that proves the rule, but I thought it was totally Jaime. Just, I was trying to end the war. I mean, I wanted to kill her. Thought it was interesting that Bronn said dragons are where our partnership ends. I know Calum and I have been going back and forth about whether or not Bronn would change sides and switch over to Tyrion. But in this instance, when he said that, I thought the subtext was dragons in general. I'm getting a little feedback here too, by the way. Which dragons is also the term for gold, right? Gold dragons. And so if he doesn't get paid, I think that's where the partnership will end.
Yeah. Sorry, go on. I was just going to say, just on that specific line of dialogue, I thought that it was interesting because I didn't read too much into it because, and again, this might be sort of confirmation bias in the sense that I have my sort of opinion, therefore I'm like adapting the evidence to fit my opinion. But I don't think that's the case. And if you do, then please let me know. But I mean, I don't think that. I think his actions spoke a lot louder than his words in this case. So again, you know, we went back to the whole my theory on words and, you know, the power of them waning and whatnot, words of wind and so forth. And I feel as though you know, just because he says that, especially just based on the fact that he's just survived a battle within an inch of his life, I don't think that you can take his word as gospel. And I think his sort of instinctive reaction to save Jaime was speaks volumes when compared to, you know, what he says. But that might just be because I've already got an opinion formed. So, you know, maybe that's.
It could be. I mean, people will argue that I absolutely do the exact same thing as well, and I am very confirmation biased. But I choose to say I just see things a different way than you do. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm just of the opinion that Bronn was friends with Tyrion a bit more than he's friends with Jaime. I think he likes, and I think even in the books we sort of get his thinking about, or even in the show, he's like, I miss that little guy, or something like that.
Yeah.
I wish in this episode we would have gotten to see a hell of a lot more Bronn Tyrion interaction.
Yeah, for sure.
Introduction, I'm very pissed off we didn't get to see any of it at all.
If it was a 10-episode season, we would have.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, but the Easter egg with Tyrion walking through the ashes is the guy cooked behind his shields. That's Mr. Martell, right? Trying to show the dragon his face and getting burned alive.
Huh? Sorry, can you explain that?
Is it Quentin Clare who goes down in the caves and hides behind his shield to Yeah, she's nodding. I think it is. So that was just all I was saying is that's an Easter egg of the guy hiding behind his shield. It's just a nod to that sort of scene.
Gotcha.
The dragon on a mountain, which I thought was one of the best visuals of the episode, when you can see like light coming through his wings and everything like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a couple metaphors, and you alluded to this in one of our earlier videos, Calum. Not anything of our reviews, but the one we did with Pack Mule and DJ.
Right. Yeah.
You said a mountain is representative of something you can't see beyond, so people,
Yes.
Imagine great things beyond the mountain, but until they get there, they can't see what it is, and that's to me what the dragons represent. Also, it's a block, it's something that you can't see past, and you got to defeat the dragon before you can get beyond it. The conversation with Dany and Tarly, or specifically Tarly and Tyrion, I thought was very interesting in the aspect of the foreign invaders. To me, that's one of these layer upon layer meanings. Yes, Dany's a foreign invader. She has Dothrakis. That's the clearest. Then we have things like, the army of the dead coming upon us, and that's another one. And then I think it's also the fact of new ideals, a new idea, a new way of thinking. That's a foreign invader. It's kind of like planting a seed, if you will, that we're going to change things. And I think that's one of the big keys that we have to accept. Like Dany's saying that she wants to end the wheel. That's the foreign idea that she's trying to instill into Westerosi society.
Right. Yep.
Tarly somewhat mirrors Jon and Mance in refusing to bend the knee to her, except the fact that he bent to Cersei, and then the original Mad King and Robert and whoever else. It is just weird. So it sort of shows his prejudices and why he's unwilling to bend to somebody, even though technically she does have roots in Westeros. He says that she doesn't, which is also interesting, that maybe there's an aspect of society that doesn't think Targaryens belong there at all. Because he said he has no roots in Westeros, and they've only been there 300 years, right?
Yeah, but I think he was talking specifically about having, like, not just being born there or having a family history there, but actually living their lifetime.
Yes.
In Westeros, as Cersei has. He had some very strange justifications for his position, I thought.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah. But I think he was talking more about, Cersei's actually lived here. She knows the lay of the land. You're a foreign invader. You're here with a group of savages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's sort of a surface thing. Again, I'm working on the sort of idea of other ideas we can draw from this as to what he is saying. And I do think that there's meaning in there about Targaryens in general. I personally do, but you're right. It could just be solely the fact that she wasn't born there. Absolutely, there's no denying that, really. Again, I've already said this, but nothing scrubs bold notions from a man's head like a few weeks in a dark cell. I personally think that probably would have been the better choice. It's just the way. It's another nod to thinking for yourself and just getting stuck in trying to realize, that maybe you don't have all the answers, and maybe somebody else's opinion sort of worth something, if that makes sense. And that's it for me. Oh, and Dany goes Mad King, which is, I think a lot of people argue that it's not what she's doing, and it's different than when Aerys burned Ned and Robert. It is slightly. I think these two had a far quicker death than just, stoking a fire and letting them cook in it. and strangle yourself. But I believe Ares did summon them down there to, you know, basically the same options was repledge fealty to me, and that's why they got summoned down there. They chose not to, so I don't see how really it is all that much different. But of course, he was a Mad King, and she's completely sane, as far as we can tell. That's it for me.
Well, I think it's not with this specific aspect. I don't think it's black and white. I think Daenerys is in a grey area. So specific elements of her psyche are influenced by her, her mad genetics, if you like. But of course, she's not wholly mad as her father was. So that, there are elements of her father within her actions, but I think there's also elements of logic and reason and intellect in there as well. So I think one thing you could argue purely from like a retrospective standpoint was that before she burned the Tarleys, there were still men standing, and following the burning, they were all kneeling. So purely looking at it from like an objective standpoint, to win a war, she's converted people. She's converted the majority of people to fight for her, or at least pledge fealty to her, by killing two people that had already like been in open rebellion. Well, not rebellion, but in open warfare against her, after being given it like multiple choices. And so in that respect, it is a bit different, but I still completely see the elements of the Mad King within that choice.
But no, arguably the other lords and ladies that were assembled in front of the Mad King were there to repledge fealty to him as well, because he already knew that people were turning against him. So the example still could have been Rickard and Brandon, and then the rest knelt before him there, except for the ones that were already fighting the war.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say that maybe they were just standing around watching. I don't know. I assume that there's other lords and ladies all summoned, not just, the Starks and everybody, but I could be wrong. Moving on, I guess. Unless anything else to add.
Do you have anything else? Claire, do you have anything else on those scenes, or should we move on?
She's nodding, I think, Calum.
Move on. Okay. So we have the first sort of version of Dragonstone scenes, which is Drogon and Jon either bonding or meeting, depending on how you want to look at it. And then following that, Jorah arrives, and there's sort of the reunion between Daenerys and Jorah. So either one of you can take us off on this one, since I did the last one.
Claire, go ahead, because I also really don't have much on this. A little bit on Jorah and a little bit on the dragons, but that's about it. Go ahead.
I think you'll probably have something completely different to what I'm going to say, which is just, I thought it was a very visceral scene. So the fact that it was like skin to skin to skin, and it was very, there was like kind of like smelling each other, and there was a lot of like animalistic from both of them. So it was, to me, more than just Drogon demonstrating that he can be kind of okay with Dany's allies. Yeah, buddies. And just I said this on our review. I know with like cats, because I'm a cat person, when cats smile, they kind of blink really slowly and open and close their eyes slowly, and that's them smiling at you. And it kind of felt like Drogon was doing that with with Jon. And I couldn't really tell what Dany's reaction was, whether it was just, it seemed like to be a mixture between curiosity and just a bit of fear.
Yeah, for sure.
On our review, Catherine always, it creeps her out when Daenerys refers to the dragons as my children. And it was quite funny because Jon did seem to give her a bit of a kind of like, that's weird sort of look.
I think I actually had in real life the exact same sort of emotional experience that Daenerys went through, because a few years ago I was looking after a dog because the owner went away for the day, and the dog had essentially it had been like I don't know the specifics, but all I know is that it had been treated badly as a puppy, and then sent off to like a shelter. And basically, as because of the fact that it was treated really badly as a puppy, we think aggressively. It reacts very negatively towards humans, and of course, I'm not drawing a parallel to the dragons in that specific sense. But when I get through the parallel, it'll make more sense. And so what happens is, I'm not sure how much you know about dogs, but basically, he was he was described as being nervous aggressive. So his past experiences reinforced the belief in his brain that humans are bad, therefore I must recoil. So whenever he got within distance of a human, like a stranger, with people he knew and had grown a bond with, he was fine. But with strangers, like he was very aggressive. So like he wouldn't bite, but he'd like growl and lunge. And I feel as though it's.
And then he met you, Callum.
No. So I was taking him for a walk and whatever, and then he ran up to a person, but he was fine with that person. And so I was sort of stood there wondering what's going on, because that doesn't really happen. Like he usually growls and whatnot. So I think I had sort of the same experience, which was just sort of, firstly, I think she was thinking, so is it that person that's special as to why he's doing this specific thing that he's not done with anyone else, or is there's some form of weirdness going on here? So I think it was like you said, I think it was sort of an emotional concoction of like curiosity, and also she was intrigued by what was going on, and she wanted to know like what the power was with John, as why was John having this effect on the dragon.
Like the animalistic kind of aspect to this scene also came into the sounds and the sound effects of it. Was almost like Drogon was purring. There was this kind of sound, and he kind of checked as Daenerys kind of dismounted. But I mean, aside from that interaction, the rest of the scene, I think, she mentioned about the knife to the heart, so that's bound to be going somewhere, which makes me think she's going to see him naked somehow to be able to determine whether this scar, whether this would have killed him.
Absolutely.
He sort of brushed it off, obviously. And then the thing that made me laugh, I thought that was a very tender scene when Jorah returned, because I'd forgotten in a way. I knew that he was making his way there, but all the Dothraki were stood in front of him and then kind of parted, and it was like, oh my God, there's Jorah. And just the thing that made me laugh was the guy's been friend zoned for so long, and he must have just thought, but he turned up and saw Daenerys, and then the very next thing he sees is Jon Snow stood right next to her, and he must have just thought, what the actual fuck? So I did feel quite sorry for Jorah. Yeah, poor guy.
I didn't feel sorry for Jorah, but first I want to, Callum's story made me think of Claire, when Marwyn ran up to the guy as a puppy and the guy took off running, so scared, which is kind of the opposite of your story. Like Claire and I both knew that Marwyn wouldn't hurt a fly, and this guy was probably 200 feet away from us, like way far away, and Marwyn's like this big, just tiny, and started up to this guy, and this guy just looked at the dog and took off screaming, like he's It was the most.
That's hilarious.
Okay, he's friendly, but yeah, it was just one of the weird.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I wish I saw that.
I did. Yeah, I put cat-like and blinking in my notes here, Claire, because I like both cats and dogs, but yeah, communicating with cats is I will blink at them and they'll quite often blink back at you, and you can have like a little game or whatever. Thought it was really cool seeing the gold flecks on Drogon. like on his back, just the detail, and so you remember sort of how the dragons were written. I thought it was a little odd that he was so soft, and like when Jon touched his skin, he kind of pushed it, like almost like you could see him sort of petting it. I thought, well, that doesn't seem very dragon-like to me. But the best thing I have is, Calum, when you first showed me the Sky trailer, like the 5-second trailer of Drogon coming to meet Jon, and we didn't see Dany in it. And all I could say to myself was, I hope that Dany is on that dragon, because if she's not, then I would have a problem with it. But she was, and so I feel that I'm not too worried about it whatsoever.
Oh, by the way, I wasn't showing you it with like an ulterior motive. I was just showing you it because it was a new trailer.
Yeah, but that's what came into my mind was just like I didn't think that you were showing it to me to say haha or anything like that. I was just, that's what popped into my head was shit, and I hope that Dany's on that dragon, and she was, so I'm happy about that. Jorah, I think, has already made up in his mind that he's not going to try for Dany anymore, and he's just willing to serve her for who he is. So I didn't feel bad for him. I don't think he wants that anymore, and I think we see that sort of later when he steps out of the way as soon as Jon shows up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And he just, okay, kisses her hand and leaves and says, you guys, I think he knows what Dany has to do now, and that's sort of his part of his healing with getting the grayscale ripped off of him. Yeah. And that's all I would have to say about that. I didn't have much on these scenes.
Yeah. I think there's nice sort of symbolism of, you know, shredding off the outer layer and having like a new person reborn, obviously with Jorah and Dany and whatnot. And I do completely agree. I think he'll sort of start writing his own journey as opposed to writing Dany's. Obviously, he'll still be connected with Dany, but I think he'll do a lot more of his own independent things. Obviously, the first of which being this whole voyage beyond the wall. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that, you know, him going through that whole experience has definitely changed him and changed his outlook. Next scene. You didn't have anything else, Claire, did you?
No.
Okay, so next scene is a very quick one. But if you guys have anything to say about it, I do have quite a small thing to say, which is quite natural as it was quite a small scene. Was Bran walking the birds? I should say skin changing, but the show uses warging to reflect all forms of animals. So I'm just going to continue saying warging because it's easier. So Bran wargs the birds. The birds fly beyond the wall. The birds see the Night's King. The Night's King looks, and the birds disperse. So you guys got anything on that?
You can go ahead. I do have a little bit, but
yeah, my very minor point, which can also be sort of interpreted as a question, is this the first time that Bran has warged multiple animals at once?
No.
When did he do that?
Well, I'm assuming maybe didn't. Maybe one just followed the other. But with the two wolves outside the tower, like Rickon's and Bran's, Summer was still there. Or not Summer, but Shaggy Dog was still there when Hodor and the Thunder was going off.
Did he warg them both?
Jon was there. He might have just warged one, and the other one followed, but they both started fighting.
Right.
So I couldn't say either way.
But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, that's all I had really on that. I thought it was interesting that there were, you know, he had a full flock as opposed to just one, because I think one of them could have done the job, but maybe he didn't want to, you know, anything to happen to one of them and whatever. But one of them might have been more discreet than a full flock. But that's all I have really.
Claire?
No, I didn't really have much on this apart from the obvious kind of, I don't know if it's like some kind of psychic link between Bran and the Night's King, but there's obviously a link there. So, and it does sound and feel very kind of Harry Potter, Voldemort, you know, that kind of like he's been touched and now there's this psychic link between them. there's no denying that really, that it kind of feels like that. Again, I don't know whether it's going to be anything like that really in the books, but it's yeah, that's all I've got to say, really. Not really much else on that.
I think the Winds of Winter will diversify itself from the show like no other previous. I think that the Winds of Winter will be the most different to its respective season than any of the previous books. Because I think, particularly with like seasons 1, 2, 3, maybe up to like 5. I mean, of course, you know, they haven't included all of the major plot lines in the books because it's not possible. But I feel as though the plot lines that they have chosen to, you know, replicate on the show, they have done them to a degree of accuracy throughout the earlier seasons. But I feel as though this if the books are anything like this season, I'll be very, very surprised.
Yeah, well, there's so much amalgamation, and even with, you know, non-POV sub-characters replacing POV characters in the show, replacing those, like, it's supposed to be, it's Jane Poole that's supposed to be Arya, right? At Winterfell, and now it's actually Sansa being Sansa.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of like stuff that's twisted up. But I agree. I think you touched on it perfectly, Calum, when you said 1 would have been a lot better. And I think perhaps one of the takeaways from Bran and the multiple wargings is generally he would send those ravens off in different directions, and it wasn't necessarily him controlling them all. He was in them all, but it was the Night King pulling those ravens to him.
Oh, I like that. That's
and
brilliant.
Because, and I also think, like Claire mentioned, that the connection between them, I don't think they're the same person. I really don't. Like, I don't think it's Bran talking to Bran or anything like that. But when the ravens, when the Night King looks up at them and they disperse, it's almost like Bran got a message there, because the very next scene, he's like, we have to send ravens. Let's send the ravens out. So I think that was kind of like the Night King giving him a message of what he's supposed to do to get Jon back where Jon's supposed to be.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, it's sort of like what we had the episode before, which is don't follow where your enemy leads you. Jon got led back to Eastwatch.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I like that.
That's all I got from that, is I think, because it makes no sense why he was in all of them, flying over them, if he's trying to be secretive and spy. It just, like,
I think that's brilliant, particularly with the reflection of the quote from Brienne. I think that's fantastic. You got anything else on this one, Claire, or should we move on to the Citadel? Okay, the Citadel is where I have most of my the ideas that I've formulated. Okay. So if you guys want to, well, I say ideas. It's more or less one idea, but quite fleshed out. So if you guys want to go ahead with any like sort of thoughts you had, and then I can go ahead whenever you guys have rounded up your thoughts.
Yeah, Claire, go ahead. I got to make sense of my notes here.
I don't have a great deal really, apart from again, just Sam being the only Tarly and him not realizing that he's the only Tarly. And
he has a sister.
Does he? And his mother's still alive, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, so they didn't wipe the house out. I mean, that's what Tyrion was saying at the beginning of the show. But I thought that when Ebros asked him, what, you know, is there a plan? Is there a solution? And I thought it was fantastic that Sam said, yeah, this is what we need to do. We need to broadcast the message. You know, we can do that as Meisters. We need to get, you know, extra men up to the wall. We need to make sure that we utilize what we've got and research a solution. It was like, oh, is that somebody who's actually talking complete sense? But still they're questioning the validity of whether or not this letter is real and this cripple boy is, whether he's crazy or not. And they will get, you know, they'll find a solution, however bloody long that will take. So I can completely understand Sam's frustration and distraction later on in the later scenes. I did think that it was quite a sweet nod to book readers that the Meisters mentioned Jenny of Oldstones after, you know, as Sam was leaving the room in a huff. And I'll just add the other scene that was at the Citadel. I'm sure will be infamous. The scene where we get Gilly talking about this secret ceremony with the High Septon and the annulment and a you know, a secret wedding ceremony. I love the fact that she mispronounced the name Prince Rhaegar, and I've adopted that now. So that's it. It's Rhaegar Targaryen, Rhaegar Tagger. So
writing that in the chat at Small Council, it was Rhaegar.
I thought that what was perfect about it was not that she read this from the book, and also she seems to have quite an aptitude for remembering things, because I was thinking, I wonder if this comes up later in the season or maybe next season, somebody mentions wherever it is that Gilly ends up, if somebody mentions Prince Rhaegar, or she gets introduced via Sam to Daenerys or whatever, and Rhaegar or Prince Rhaegar or Rhaegar is mentioned, whether or not that she'll be able to remember that piece, because she remembered the number of steps, not the number of shits, the number of steps, and corrected him. And it's like she's actually, you know, I imagine Gilly to have like this kind of photographic memory for things that she's reading, because she's so impressed by the fact that she's reading. And I also think, I don't know, I mean, in when we did House Polished, I did say, oh, she's a bit like old Nan Gilly. You have to really listen to what she's saying and pay attention to what she's saying. But then later on, I felt a bit kind of, it just seemed like, well, why? I started to pick holes in it. And it was like, why was it a High Septon that writing, right, rather than a Maester or an Archmaester? Why would it have been the High Septon conducting a ceremony in Dawn? I'll have to be quick. The dog needs to go out. Just 1 second.
Okay, I'll jump in while she's letting the dog out. I could hear him yawning in the background. It was making me sad.
You love that dog.
I do.
Sorry.
I do. Okay, go ahead, Claire.
The door was open, but not open enough, clearly. What was I saying? Yeah, well, so I think she will be able to remember that passage, but I just started to pick holes in it a little bit and think, that was kind of slipped in there quite conveniently, and does it really prove any? I don't know. I started to kind of be a bit, but despite that, I thought that, yes, so this was dropped in the middle of this episode, Gilly talking about Prince Rhaegar and this secret ceremony. And what made me laugh was the fact that Sam, not only did he ignore her, but he actually was talking about, in his context, about secrets being completely ignored and left on dusty shelves, and the Meisters aren't utilising the resources that they've got. But he actually said secrets completely ignored in his argument, and she just said that, you know, and it was just, I don't know, it just made me laugh. I thought that was quite ironic. And I just wonder, so where do you think they're going? That's what I wanted to ask you. Where do you think Sam and Gilly are heading? To the wall?
Via Winterfell, maybe. I mean, I don't know, but they're heading back to Jon anyways. Jon was the one that sent him down there, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we'll see them again this season, or do you think that's it?
I think he'll have to show up at some point. I could totally be wrong, though. I'm hoping so. I love Sam and Gilly scenes. I totally do. They're some of my favorite every time. Calum, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll save my my sort of bigger thoughts for after this. But I thought it was interesting how Sam seemingly just sort of plucked random scrolls from like the restricted section, whether or not he knew, like, you know, specifically what was in exactly which place. But in the scene, he literally walks in the room, you know, takes a scroll, puts it in the bag, and leaves. He didn't check the scroll to see if it was, you know, if it actually consisted of useful information or not. So that's quite interesting how he's He's risked his entire future as a maester on a whim, like, you know, on information that may or may not be relevant to the problem that he's trying to solve. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's just another instance of Jaime and Bronn floating down the river, right?
But of course, you know, the scrolls that he quite conveniently picked will hold all the answers, so that'll be fine.
Yeah. It's just we have to suspend belief in these things. It's anything like that. We just can't dig too deep.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
They are like a pet peeve of it just irritates you a little bit. And I agree. I thought the exact same thing when I saw it, especially with the scroll. Books I could sort of understand, they have titles, but he literally just reaches up and grabs that scroll.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like the one, right? So yeah.
Yeah. Shall I shoot off on my thing then, or have you guys got anything else?
I'll do a few here and then probably add into yours. I think Claire had some great points about why would the High Septon be doing this secret ceremony and who is recording it and everything like that. I suppose I didn't even think about picking that apart, but it is there to be picked apart. You sent me the Westeros.org video of the annulment bit. Why did you send me that? I watched some of it, but I never got through it all.
It's just because you were talking about annulments the other day and about how you'd mentioned annulments before in the past, but it is obviously in the book with Tywin kind of annulling Tyrion and Tysha's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason. I mean, he was underage to start with, so you could say it was probably illegal, but I honestly, I didn't watch the video. I just saw the title and thought, oh, that might be something quite interesting.
All right, so I watched some of it, and they had some interesting points. One of the things that it made me think of, though, is can you annul a marriage like Rhaegar and Elya's when they have kids already? Like, could you just...
Yeah, that was the other thing that I started picking holes in. And also, Targaryens aren't averse to having, like, several wives. So why would he need to have done that? I just don't, you know, to fulfill the prophecy. He didn't need to do that. And why would the High Septon be from King's Landing be traveling with them? Why wouldn't it be the diary of like a Septon from Dawn in a secret ceremony? Why was the High Septon it started to really not make sense to me.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. What I was originally going to say about the reason that they mention annulment, of course, once again, they don't give you who Rhaegar married, and yet everybody apparently knows, oh, well, it's got to be Lyanna. And yet we keep getting it drug out and drug out and drug out. There's a reason. Once again, I will say, do not follow where your enemy leads you. People are being pulled in a certain direction, and they're supposed to go there, but everybody just wants to follow along. That's my personal opinion. I could be, as I always say, the idiot that's the only one standing and everybody else is right, and that will totally crush me. But I don't want to follow the pack, so to speak. And I believe that I see different things that have just as much meaning as everything else. And one of them is Sam trying to explain to these maesters his opinion of something that he sees, and they all see different things, and they refuse to listen to him. Which feels a little bit like when I talk to small council members and things like that. Like, nope, it's not happening, MP. Get over it. It's not. It's Rhaegar and Lyanna. That's it. I thought Sam was doing a great MP impersonation there. The other thing is, the one maester says maybe you need to do some more scribing to, and I forget what the actual quote is. I had it here in one of my notes, but I can't. Perhaps you need more scribing to discipline your mind, which basically means you need to read our works and our books so you start thinking like we do, which could be maybe the maesters are smart too. I don't know. But the quote of the episode that I like, and I think this was intentional, I could be blowing this way out of proportion though, but is Ebros to Sam. He says, "I promise you, I'm going to put a period at the end of that. I promise you, we will get to the truth of it one way or another. I look at that as a quote referencing Ned's promise to Lyanna. I promise, Leah, I promise, or whoever it's written. And then he says, we will get to the truth of it one way or another, book or show, one way or another. I saw Claire lift her head up there. You know, she might enjoy that. I still think it's going to happen in the show as well, but whatever. That's it, Calum. Go for it.
Yeah, so this great points, by the way. I just sort of think that it makes sense for me to preface this by saying that me and MP have sort of discussed in private what we sort of deem the White Walkers to sort of represent metaphorically, and I hope you don't mind me sharing very quickly your sort of opinion that the White Walkers represent repressed emotions. Is what you said to me in private. I'm not sure if you still believe that, but
yeah, no, that and various other things. You can ascribe many different things into them. Basically, secrets that you're keeping within yourself. Like all the secrets of the story will kind of be revealed once the wall falls. Repressed emotions that come back to haunt you, which is kind of what the White Walkers do. They were forgotten about, then they come back. The sins of your fathers, like it can be anything, but. I
just wanted to say that because obviously we've discussed this in private, so I just wanted to let people know that. So speaking on the subject of the White Walker's sort of metaphorical representation, it's sort of it's interesting because I was reading a BBC poll for the most respected Brit of all time, and the poll said that Winston Churchill took that title. And it obviously reminds me of one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is, the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. Which I think is an astonishingly brilliant quote for multiple reasons. But I think insofar as it relates to Song of Ice and Fire, I think that it sums up the White Walkers in quite a sublime way, like at least metaphorically, because I think they represent the truth that no one wants to believe. So like the truth is the truth. Well, the thing is, it's kind of similar to sort of a line of discussion that many people in our world seem to have, where they talk about their personal truths. Which, I mean, I know there's quite a difference, but to me, it never really made sense because, you know, if your personal truth is in conflict with the truth, then your personal truth is worthless. And again, of course, you know, there are differences, but I think this sort of this parallel can be applied quite nicely to the Citadel in the sense that the Maesters are, at least the Maesters that we've been presented with, are seemingly, you know, extremely unwilling to have their views challenged. Yes. It's like they've got the first aspect of science correct, which is, you know, the aspect of being skeptical about everything. That's fine. They've got that down, brilliant. But it seems to me that they haven't got like the second and arguably most important aspect of science understood, which is sort of like just because a theory is accepted as true. Let's take gravity, for example. Like the theory of gravity is accepted by all, you know, reasonable human beings as being, you know, a fact. But if another scientist came with, you know, a counter proposal or a counter argument with, you know, with very strong merit and evidence to back it up, that, you know, argues that gravity isn't true and in fact this is true, then our scientists would, in theory, be very happy to, you know, abandon the theory of gravity for this new and improved scientific theory.
Once it gets proved,
assuming that it has more evidence.
Sure. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't simply write it off as long as it was, you know, as long as it was presented with merit. So that the whole idea of, you know, scientists are supposed to look into things and you know, and constantly be on the lookout for any ways that they can improve their own theories and the theories that they consider to be true. But I feel as though, like, the Maesters in A Song of Ice and Fire are very, like, they're sort of closed books, and Sam is an open book, sort of still yearning for like the pursuit of knowledge, which is why I feel as though they seem to have quite a lot of conflict. But again, you know, no character in A Song of Ice and Fire is perfect, and obviously, you know, that the whole idea of Sam being an open book, really wanting to learn information, is you know, contradicted by his scene with Gilly. But I think that in the Citadel scenes, I think his passion for knowledge and his passion to expand what he believes to be true is quite evident, and you know the conflict that he has with the Maesters is I think a result of that.
Absolutely. I just want to say, look at Claire. Say something, Claire. Oh, it's walking behind her. It's a perfect shot earlier.
But yeah, that's all I had on the Twitter.
That is Asha Greyjoy right there, or Yara, if we were seeing as we're on TV. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely great. I referred to that sort of as the truth too, in the opinion of the White Walkers and your opinion of the Maesters in general. I completely agree with it. You said it perfectly. They're closed books, and Sam's an open book, and I think that fits perfectly. Claire, Asha, anything to add? No.
Let's move on. Let's move swiftly on to King's Landing before we fall asleep. So King's Landing, let's combine the Davos and Gendry scene with Tyrion and Jaime scenes. So if you guys have anything to say about those two scenes, then pick and choose what you want to share.
I'll go with Jaime and Tyrion first. The only thing I really have to say is Jaime mentions, which he's mentioned before too, which he said, I told Bronn, the next time if I ever see you again, I'm going to split you in two.
Yeah.
I dig into that, and I think that he actually does cut Tyrion in two in this, and Tyrion's loyalties will once again be tested. And I feel like this is going to end up being Dany's betrayal for blood. Tyrion will turn on her at some point to keep Jaime alive.
Yeah.
I don't know when that's going to happen or anything like that, but I feel like that's going to be the betrayal for blood. And Tyrion is now divided in is Dany the right person, or should I side with my family and people that I have a history with, so to speak? I mean, I don't know. That's all I have to say on that part, and the fact that I'm so pissed off we didn't get Tyrion and Bronn.
We can also jumble in the whole Jaime Cersei pregnancy scene as well.
Just that I was right, which is awesome. And once again, I will reiterate, if anybody wants to go look at the invasion of Casterly Rock, there's two versions there. There's the failed one, and there's the successful one. The successful one is sperm impregnating an egg. That's the visual representation. The failed one is a nod to history and the fact that Tywin was sterile. And I see Marwyn down in the corner as well, and his little tail wagging.
I feel it would be intellectually dishonest of me not to sort of air my thoughts on this. I know you like you know them already, but firstly, I'd like to say that is one of the best predictions that I've seen personally. That whole idea of like the sperm impregnating being like a symbolism of Cersei becoming pregnant. I think that's brilliant, and I think it very, very well may turn out to be true. But as you know, I don't believe Cersei is actually pregnant. But this is, I'm just sort of telling the viewers. I feel as though it's more of a play on Cersei's part. So if you contrast the conversation that she has earlier in this episode, where Jaime essentially tells her that there's no way they can win, and he's very sort of implying that he wants to surrender with his lexical choices, and she replies with, she'd rather die than surrender, and he should too because he's a soldier, and then he leaves. Then we find out later that she's aware of the fact that Jaime is meeting with Tyrion, and she's also aware of the idea that Tyrion and Jaime do have quite a close bond. Again, reiterated by the fact that Jaime still to this day defends Tyrion, namely where he says to Cersei that Tyrion is innocent of the charge of murdering our boy. And I feel as though Cersei can quite clearly see Jaime slipping towards Tyrion in that respect and wanting to bring like a peaceful conclusion to the war. And I feel as though the only way that she felt that she could motivate Jaime to fight for her and continue that sort of that connection that they have is by giving him something to fight for. And I feel as though we've seen Cersei be a master purveyor of emotional manipulation throughout the series and throughout the books. So I feel it's very much in her wheelhouse to do this, and to sort of make this up in order to keep him on side and to, you know, emotionally blackmail him in that sense, so that give him something to fight for, give him a reason to really want to win this war, as opposed to, you know, resolve it peacefully or surrender, which is even worse for her. And I think that that will be the breaking point which sends Jaime over the edge, and why he, going back to my previous theory in the very first episode, where Jaime stood at the fingers, Cersei at the neck. I think the fact that when Jaime finds out that Cersei's lied about this and she's using it to you know, manipulate him and keep him on side, I think that'll be what triggers him to, you know, in anger, to kill her. But that's my thing. But again, I just want to reiterate really quickly for the viewers that I thought that your sort of theory crafting and your ability to recognize that symbolism is one of the greatest Song of Ice and Fire theories I've ever heard.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, and I'm glad somebody actually took it into account. That's all I gotta say. Claire, go ahead.
I've got nothing. Sorry, I'm lost. I was doing other things.
That's absolutely fine. We were just talking about the anything to do with King's Landing, really.
Gendry Robert, or Gendry John, I mean.
Okay, yeah, I've got some stuff on King's Landing. Just a few things that I mentioned in House Polish, but I can mention here. I thought that it's quite, with Jaime and Cersei, I thought it's quite interesting that, and apologies if you've already discussed this. I was
It's all right.
doing something. That she's so limited in that she can't put herself in the position of her enemies and try to think in advance about what their motivations might be. And it was the fact that it took Jaime to actually say to her, why would Olenna want her granddaughter Marjorie to marry either Joffrey or Tom, and which one? And it was you could just see the penny drop and her expression changed, and her acting was just fantastic throughout. You could see the way her brain was working through all of those emotions, but it just made me think that's going to be Cersei's downfall. She can only see her own motivation and what's immediately in her bubble. She can't can't see the motivations of her enemies, and that's, you know, for example, Olenna. So is she really pregnant? Yes, I think she probably is. I'd be interested to know what she means and whether or not she's going to insist that Jaime punishes Bronn. I think that could be a big fan thing in perhaps one of the next couple of episodes coming up. I thought that the rest of the brief scenes in King's Landing, when Davos and Tyrion arrived, I didn't really have much to say about the interaction between Jaime and Tyrion. It was emotional, but just not really what I expected, because I can't get past the fact that the plan is ridiculous. Why do they have to go and take a white to prove to Cersei? It just seems crazy to me. Just like, why is she even worth that? Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand the plan.
I do.
So well, so that kind of just made me think I didn't imagine their reunion to be like that, although emotional as it was, and yeah, it didn't really do that much for me, that scene. I thought the Gendry and Davos scene was hilarious. I've just put in my notes, Gendry was born ready, and it was just like he's been waiting like a springed coil, ready for somebody to say, right, come on, we're out of here. I thought that was brilliant.
It absolutely was. He's totally young Robert, and that's what's being to us.
Yeah.
Exactly as young Robert was described as, is just eager and ready for a fight as soon as it's upon him, right? So
And the only other thing to mention really is the scene on the smugglers, on the beach where the boat was. I don't know. I think that we spent a little bit too long maybe with those guards. That seemed to be drawn out quite a bit for me. Yes, it was an opportunity for us to see Gendry in action and see how capable he is in battle, which is useful. But I think it was interesting. It wasn't until later on somebody said to me, "Oh, the actor who," and he's quite a well-known comedy actor. Calum, you'll know, Kevin something or other he's called. But one of the guards, one of the Lannister guards, the one that got his head smashed in first with the warhammer. He's exactly the same actor who played Ned's character in the play in Bravos. You know, the one that was like really stupid Ned that the audience were laughing at and everything. And it was like, and it just made me think, that's really, I mean, there's absolutely no connection whatsoever in terms of the show and the plot, but it's like, there's so many out of work actors that would love to have a bit part like that, and you have to get in like within a few episodes of each other, you've got the same bit part actor. But he's not, you know, like I say, he's quite well known. He's been in loads of stuff. He's a well-known comedy actor in the UK. I just can't remember. He's Kevin something. But yeah, anyway, it was just, again, another reason for me to think, Tyrion, what are you doing? You're just not as capable as you think you are. You're all talk and you have to big yourself up all the time, you know, and he's a wise man once said, and it's like, really, Tyrion? And just the fact that he kind of walked straight past it. And it was like, yeah, okay, maybe there was no other option. He couldn't just turn round. And he can't really disguise himself, but he just kind of walked past them, and it's like, well, you're going to have to deal with this. They're going to have to, you know, you're going to have to kill them. He just seems quite clumsy and reckless in his hand of the queenship to me, Tyrion. So I'm a little bit, there's a few characters this season that I'm a little bit disappointed with, and Tyrion's one of them, and so's Jaime. So yeah. Yeah, that's kind of it from me, I think. The only other thing to mention was that Davos is, throughout this episode, Davos's age, or the fact that he's old and something to do with his age, was mentioned like 2 to 3 possibly separate occasions, which makes me think, does that mean that we can be does that mean he's going to die, or does it mean he is going to reach that old age?
I think the ripe old age part that he quotes at one point, I think that's a throwback to Elena, I believe, says that at one point also. I've only lived to a ripe old age. You don't have to listen. I believe. I might be wrong there. I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, that was it for me for King's Landing.
I can answer somewhat the plan, at least in regards to the show. Maybe the plan itself was stupid, but people need proof of something before they believe it. That's the whole point. Cersei won't believe it, which we have. Here's another throwback. Tyrion, when he's being tried, he says, I can lay all the evidence in the world at Cersei's feet, and she will never believe me anyways. That's what's going to happen here. So I think you're right. Regardless if she believes him or not, and she knows the truth, which I believe she did back then also, I don't think she ever at once thought Tyrion was the murderer. She just chose him as the scapegoat. But so even if she believes him, she's never willingly going to accept it. And I think that's the whole throwback of why they have to bring her proof of some sort and see what she goes with. I did think, Calum, I know you probably want to talk on it too, but yeah, as I said, the whole Gendry and Jon thing, which is very cool, because regardless of any theory, my theory versus R plus L equals J, it's 2 fake bastards meeting each other. Well, I guess you have to subscribe to Ladonna's theory that Gendry is Cersei and Robert's first and only legitimate son, right? Making him a fake bastard. and John, of course, being a fake bastard, and their interaction. The throwaway here is that if Gendry is Robert and Cersei's fake bastard, he's real, and John is portraying Ned's fake bastard, not Rhaegar's fake bastard. So that would be my attachment there. People argued that he's portraying Rhaegar's fake bastard, but he's not, because the scene is representative of Ned and John, or Ned and Robert meeting each other, not Rhaegar and Robert fighting with each other. That's all I would have to say about that. And I think, yeah, I believe people also said that Tyrion ran through King's Landing wearing Targaryen armor, although I'm not sure. I didn't pick that up, but I thought I heard people saying that in small council. So, like, which is very, like, why would he be wearing that if he's trying to go? But I could be wrong. Maybe I misheard something.
I don't think that's true, but I can't actually remember what he was wearing.
Very possible I could have misinterpreted or misheard it being said. I just can't remember. Maybe they were just talking about Tyrion, just how easily, like, he's not even in any sort of disguise and just walking around however far he has to go when he's in public. I don't think he just sneaks right in someplace. But again, we have to suspend belief there. Yeah, sorry, I think that is everything, guys. Yeah, go ahead, Calum.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'll be. I mean, this is sort of, you know, alluding back to my point about the Winds of Winter being the most different to its respective season of any of the books. But I'll be very, very surprised if this plan is reciprocated in the book. I just don't see it happening. Maybe I mean, I think there might be a reason in which Jon needs to go north beyond the wall. I don't think he'll take those characters with him. No chance for me personally, and I don't think it'll be to capture a White. But I do think he will go beyond the wall. Again, but that's irrelevant really. Let's see here. King's Landing. Then we go to. Oh yeah, we now go to Dragonstone, where Jon and Gendry, Davos, and Jorah leave Dragonstone. And there is a question that I really, really want an answer to, because it's been bugging me since I watched the episode. Which is, there was that. As soon as I utter the words, you'll know exactly what I mean. But there was a very, very, very incessantly repeated quote in this scene, which is, "I wish you good fortune in the wars to come." And there is something about that quote, and I just can't put my finger on it. I mean, the only sort of the only parallels I can draw between all the people who said it is that they've all died. Because it's Sir Arthur Dayne, Mance Rayder, Jon Snow, and who else was it?
Isn't it Ned as well in Bran's flashback? Didn't Ned say it when he was fighting?
Yeah, and Ned. So all of them have died, but I'm sure there must be something else to this, because that, you know, the writers have put that in there very deliberately. Like, there's no doubt about it. That's a very strange quote. "I wish you good fortune in the wars to come."
I can put my 2 cents in there, if you will. And it just came to me right now when you said it, but you're right. They keep emphasizing it, as Claire will know, although I still haven't fully crafted it. I have a theory about children being interpreted as money within this show, and something called the coin purse. So good fortune to me in the wars to come is less to do about the actual wars to come, you know, subtextually, than it is that. And so maybe it's just, I wish you a good life in the war against life to come. I hope you have a great family and this and that. I hope you do well in your life.
Yeah, I mean,
but now that mine's over, so to speak.
Yeah, I really like that interpretation. But what I mean is that you've got characters that are very you know, diametrically different. And they're saying that, I mean, unless we're accepting that's perhaps just sort of like a something that the Westerosi say when
I think it
leaving.
could possibly be a TV thing that's been threaded in there. And the only other example that I can give is if anyone is watching who's a Doctor Who fan. There was a series, in fact, probably a 2 or 3 series, when David Tennant was Doctor Who and Billy Piper was Rose, the companion. And there was this phrase, bad wolf, that kept popping up in various different random places. And nobody really, it kept cropping up, and you and you knew that it was, you know, that there was some sort of thread to it. And it wasn't until like many seasons later that there was a point to. I can't remember what the point was, unfortunately, but there was a point to it. But it's one of those TV things where they kind of, you know, to thread an entire series together, possibly.
Yeah, and it could just be colloquialism, like Valor Morgulis, Valor Harris, right? And you just
I was going to say it could just be like a turn of phrase. Yeah, it could just be a turn of phrase, but I don't know. It seems strange to me personally, but meh.
No, I fully believe that you're right. It will have some sort of meaning at some point. We just don't necessarily know what it is at this point in time.
But yeah, it has been bugging me because I don't know, I mean, I completely see what you're saying. I mean, it could very well just be, you know, a societal term, like turn of phrase that people, you know, use when leaving, you know, when vacating a person or whatever. But I don't know. It just seems weird that those words would be used, especially when we haven't. It's not as if it's been used, you know, colloquially by other people. Like we haven't seen it. We haven't heard it from anyone else. It's only these specific cases. So I feel as though if it was just, you know, a generic turn of phrase, we'd have heard it a lot more than we have. It's in specific situations that it's uttered. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it.
I think I think it's there for a reason, and I think we will find out. But I'm going to move us along. We've got 3 remaining scenes in Dragonstone. There's Tyrion and Varys. Then there's Jon receiving the news about his siblings. And then there's Jon meeting Gendry. So I'm going to run through what I've got for those 3 scenes. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that all right, gentlemen?
That's fine.
We were just going off on a bit of a wars to come tangent then.
I want to apologize. I jumped in. Yeah, Jon and Gendry. I jumped ahead of ourselves earlier. I apologize.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think the scene with Varys and Tyrion was the only interesting thing that I got from that was it was interesting to see Varys drinking alcohol, because and he seemed to sort of wince at the taste of it, like he wasn't used to it. It was just something that I noted. I don't know whether it's because he feels comfortable with Tyrion. I don't know whether it's for courage or something, but he just, you know, he doesn't seem like the type that would normally drink. And I don't think we have seen him drinking in other situations. Correct me if I'm wrong. The whole conversation that they had about making her listen it just made me think about the betrayal again. Who is going to betray Daenerys? And there were the conversations that we had last season about
That's so cute.
the conversations we had last season kind of veered towards potentially Varys.
Look at that pooch.
Yeah,
sorry.
And he's wagging his tail, and I don't think it is Tyrion. I'm not sure. For me, of the 3, as Mrs. Cronall says, the three heads of the sheep, which is Varys, Tyrion, and Missandei. I think the betrayal will be Missandei, personally. And I think that's going to go back to Grey Worm. I think Grey Worm is going to die at some point still. I maintain that belief that Grey Worm's going to die. And I think Missandei will blame Daenerys. And I think there's some treachery going to be going on there between Missandei. That she's the one that's going to betray Daenerys, but the love will be for Grey Worm.
Who do you think she would betray her for? Like, what would, aside from Grey Worm dying, like, she wouldn't flip sides to Cersei. So, like, who? Jon?
I don't know. I don't know if she's feeding anyone information necessarily. But I just have a feeling that it's going to be Missandei that'll be the one that betrays her of the three. But that's all that scene made me think about, really, was like, someone's going to betray somebody's going to betray Dany. Who's it going to be? And the next, I'll just skip through the other scenes. Jon receiving the news, the Raven from Winterfell. I thought that was a bit it was a little bit disappointing that that's how he found out about about Arya and Bran being alive. It just seemed a little bit of an anticlimax. And when he said that he needs to go home, I thought, well, now that he realizes that they're alive, maybe he's going to at least want to swing by Winterfell on the way to the wall. So it was a surprise for me at the end of the episode when that's where they turned up, without at least having a quick scene at back at Winterfell and having an emotional reunion. Look at this.
I know. It's adorable. I'm so jealous.
I haven't seen MP smile for that length of time ever in my life. You've held that smile for the last 15 minutes, I believe. I've just been watching you just smiling at the sight.
Jeez.
I think, yes, you can. Again, I just questioned the plan about them going to capture a White to prove to Cersei. I just thought that was a ridiculous plan. And I've just put the sexual tension. So there must have been, like, in that episode, the beginnings of the sexual tension between them, that you could tell she was going to miss him. And then just I didn't really make any notes or have that many observations about Jon and Gendry, apart from the fact that Jon seemed to warm to him quite well, and Gendry, again, just up for it straight away, goes straight in and saying, "This is who I am," and it's that kind of, bastard to bastard, bro hood kind of. I'm with you. I'm coming. I can use this warhammer. Yeah, so I like it. I don't know if he's going to be an expendable character. I think it'd be a shame that
I don't think
he's introduced and then he just kind of disappears again. So I think it would be nice for him to see out. I mean, there would have been so much. If they'd have swung by Winterfell, I was a bit disappointed, actually, because Gendry could have seen Arya, Jon could have seen Bran and Arya, and they could have picked up Brienne maybe on the way for Tormund. They could have done it so much better. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And also, the only last thing was I did wonder whether or not Jorah agreed to go just so that he could kind of scope out Jon and kind of keep an eye on, get the measure of this guy who seems to be interested in his queen.
Sure, although Jorah was the first to volunteer before Jon. Jon didn't say he would. I think he would have all the time, but didn't say he was going until Davos said they won't follow Jorah, and that's when Jon agreed to it.
The one thing I'll say about this whole scene, I've just got one really quick thing to say, and then I'm happy to listen to whatever you guys have to say and then move on. Which is, and it's not even really relating specifically to Game of Thrones, but it's just how I was very critical earlier in this review of the writing of Game of Thrones this season. But one thing I will say is the acting, particularly with sort of between Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington, sort of building the foundation of that relationship, and setting it up in what has been a very short amount of time. Just their sort of the way in which they can sort of express that emotion and that building of love. The first sight. You can imply that they've got some sort of sexual chemistry, and then like they're building up the emotional chemistry, and it's all very, 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 very good acting. So I just wanted to contrast that with what I said earlier, because I didn't want to imply that it was a bad show in any way, but I think that is definitely one of the high points for me personally, just specifically with Emilia Clarke and Kit Harington, the way they've portrayed this, the beginning of this relationship, I thought has been absolutely phenomenal.
Did you think from the books that they would end up getting together?
Ooh, I knew in the show they would 100%.
Did you?
In the book, yeah, for sure. In the books, I'm not sure. In the books, I think I see I knew in the show it would be a relationship of love. But I always thought that in the books it would be like a political marriage.
Political. Okay, no, I can get with that. I think there's definitely a alluding there.
The show wants to romanticize and fantasize about certain elements of the books to conform to what viewers are expecting to see, which is which always takes place in books, and there's always that differentiation between books and TV show, and I think that will be one of them.
I have another quote from Gendry where he's like, I don't know if it's an exact quote, but he's like, "Here I am arming Lannisters. You think I'm happy about it?" This is something also that you can argue Robert did by turning a blind eye to Cersei and the kids. They just gave them more weapons, if you will, with the kids.
That's good.
Yeah, shit. Varys and Tyrion, I don't think I have anything. I spoke on Jorah getting out of the way of Jon. And I was going to add in when Claire was speaking, I wonder when Gendry and Arya and Jon do meet, if Gendry is going to further his, sort of reenactment of Robert's life and being exactly like Robert and really swing that hammer around. But,
yeah, I did have something really quickly for the Tyrion and Varys scene, because I feel as though Varys in this particular scene gives quite a lot of evidence to the theory that I relayed in the previous episode with the whole, I'm not going to get into it in detail now, but when I said that the characters that use their wit and intelligence and their words to build power, both politically and societally, their power's waning. I feel as though Varys is a testament and embodies that theory in this scene. You've got him in the previous season scheming and being very powerful, operating from the shadows, having all the information and whatnot. And he still has some of that to an extent. He read the letter and all that, but again, it didn't amount to anything. And he was very much relying on Tyrion. So he was like, "You need to find a way to control her. You need to do this. You need to do that." Whereas previously, Varys he didn't tell someone else what to do. He didn't rely on anyone else. He did it himself. He knew all the information. He made plans that he felt needed to be made, rather than relying on someone else. So I feel as though that embodies that quite nicely.
I've been really impressed with that point of yours. I think it's very apparent through a lot of this. I believe I tried to bring it up in small council as well. I'm fully in agreement. This is all about actions right now rather than discussions and talking. You did make me think of another thing about Varys and Tyrion. The one thing I had on that is when they ask about the letter, and Varys finally admits that he's read it, and he says nothing good. There is two good things in that letter, though, which is Bran's alive and Arya's alive. And it's just weird that he phrased it like that. It could just be because essentially it's talking about the White Walkers. I just found it a bit strange. Jon doesn't even seem like Claire said, all that happy about it. He's like, I thought they were dead, and then it's kind of over with. Now I got to go fight White Walkers, and I'm gonna fly right by them on the way, or sail right by them. It's weird that they took a ship there as well.
Yes. Shall we move on to the Fellowship of the North?
Yes, sure. That's a good one too. Fellowship of the North. I like that one. It's definitely a fellowship of something. That's for sure.
And then we can wrap up because I need to go to bed. So John goes to Eastwatch, down into the cellar, where he's escorted by Tormund, where him, Gendry, and John come face to face with the Brotherhood Without Banners and the Hound. Whether or not the Hound can be included in that group is up for debate. I feel as though he's sort of just tagging along as opposed to actually being a member.
Yeah.
But
no, I'm with you.
But yeah, anything on that scene?
No, I think again I was just still very much kind of a little bit like the beginning of the episode where I couldn't get past the whole Bronn Aquaman. I couldn't get past why are they at Eastwatch already without having gone to Winterfell when John said I'm going home. So I didn't I didn't quite understand that, but it was nice to see Tormund. We'd not seen Tormund for a while, and I did like his little jibe about Brienne.
Yeah, I like that as well.
I still don't think they're destined to be together. I know other opinions.
Mine.
Yeah, but I just at the end of episode 5 had a list of the 7 the fellowship that were going beyond the wall and who I thought may survive or not survive, but I can't really get into that because we can't do predictions or anything for the next episode because there's no point in that. So that's really all I got, apart from I thought that it was again a kind of TV speed things up, where it was kind of like, oh yeah, we used your family used to hate us and we used to, and it's like, oh well, look, we're the ones that are breathing, we're alive. It doesn't matter about our differences. So it was very kind of yeah, it was a bit of an epic ending, but in a bit of a cheesy way almost. But we will see what happens next episode. I am looking forward to reviewing.
I'll just say something very quickly, and then I'll let you have the final sort of word, MP, because what I'm saying is very quick. I was slightly disappointed with the ending, purely because I felt as though it was a bit anticlimactic. So I thought it would have been better if they'd have trimmed. Again, this is sort of just my armchair director opinion. But I think they should have trimmed 5 minutes, maybe even 3-4 minutes off the whole, the city guards scene in which they come down and they have a long conversation and eventually they die anyway. I think that could have been wrapped up in 30 seconds with them wanting to see what's in the boat. Tyrion comes down, they say the dwarf, and then as they turn around, Gendry hits them and they leave. That could have been over in 30 seconds. And then we could have used that 5 minutes to have them actually leave the wall. And then, you have the Fellowship marching through the mist. As they come to the end of the mist, they see the army of the dead in the very far distance. And you have the contrast of the two, and then it comes to a close, rather than them just walking out. I thought it was quite anticlimactic, and I think that would have been better. But that's my opinion.
I think we still, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I felt like we still don't know exactly how close the army of the dead are.
Or maybe even the sound, just something to connect, just something to bring the White into this episode in some way. I feel as though them just walking out of the gates wasn't a great ending for me. But again, that's my opinion, and everyone has their right to that.
My only thing was, and Claire touched on it, was everybody was talking about their histories with each other, and they're all over it in face of the greater good to go beyond the wall, right? Tormund and Jorah talking about the old Lord Commander G.O.T. Gendry talking about brotherhood. Somebody else as well. Marwin playing with Asha.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I wasn't on mute.
Fine. I was enjoying it. I was just trying to figure out what was happening. And all that sort of was, and the fact that there was a wall between them, the cage between them, and it seemed like the team of the Lord of Light, if you're thinking like I am, are on the north side of that cage, and the team of the Snow Folk are on sort of the south side, which is juxtaposed with the way it would be in real life or in real above ground Westeros. And then the last bit, I think definitely we were supposed to picture them walking out of the jaws of a dragon when that gate sort of opens up, right? I mean, that was kind of the visual. Whatever that means, I have no idea, but definitely supposed to see that mouth as like a mouth, or that gate as a mouth. That's all I really have on it. Yeah, into the mist, into the unknown. That's what's happening.
I think that's quite a fitting way for your channel, for it to be that you're the one who wraps it up.
Oh, that's awful. I'm not good at wrapping shit up.
No, I mean your final point being the last point that we make. But yeah, no, that's fine, and you know, the viewers that haven't seen the leaked episode that mist will soon be dispersed. So I hope you guys enjoy that episode and take it easy. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for coming by. Thank you again, Claire, for filling in for DJ, and hopefully we can get you on for the finale. I know Small Council does want you as well for the finale, so it's a busy week for you. 3 videos in a week.
Hey.
Not nail polish ones. And again,
season 8.
Any nail polish fans, Claire's got her own nail polish channel now, so go check it out. She does great work.
Yeah, I just want to finish by saying that I thought on reflection that this was a bit of a filler episode. There's lots of dialogue and lots of conversations, and to some extent the plots had, you know, advancing, but I think it's because I have watched the leaked episode. Just, you know, the way it ended seemed very much like a setup for the next episode, but yeah, I still liked it.
I thought it was one of the better episodes myself. I liked I loved the interactions with Gendry and Jon, and the secret dialogue and the subtext. I thought it was all good. I really enjoyed it.
I would describe it as foundational rather than filler, but I do see exactly what you're saying. And on that note, I shall leave.
All right, we're shutting down. All right, bye guys.
Bye.